Hi, this is Josh Tiffany, and I'll be performing the story Courage, which is adapted from a spoken word piece by Henry Rollins. When I graduated from high school, I watched as every single one of my classmates went off to their fabulous careers that their parents could afford to give them. They went off to the Ivy League universities, went off to the military academy, and did everything that you'd expect from a bunch of graduates coming out of a rich kid's boys' school. I, however, being the scholarship kid, went out to sow my wild oats and find my way in the world, and pretty much which meant I needed to take any job that I could. Because I'd worked all through my high school career as a clerk in a pet store, I was very used to dealing with animal feces and dead animals and getting the new ones and throwing out old ones. So, because of that, I landed myself a gig working in a laboratory that was testing on animals. And pretty much it was almost the same routine as the pet store, only rather than selling the pets, it was my job to cart them down the hall to wherever they did whatever experiments they were doing on them. And when they were done, throw out the dead ones, cart back the good ones, and keep them quarantined so no infection spread. And just make sure that all their shit was cleaned out of their cage and all the animals that were supposed to be kept alive were kept alive, and those that needed to be tossed were tossed. And I still remember the day where they wheeled in the pet that we all knew as Tiberius. Now, we were used to mice, and mice were cool, they were cute, they were fuzzy, never really aggressive. And occasionally they did test on some rats, and some of the rats at that point in time had been so doped up or weirdly manipulated, they were just kind of docile and lay there, or just kind of scampered around their cage. And then there was Tiberius. He was a rat that I'd heard rumored had the record for being the longest surviving animal test subject anywhere. And this thing was mean. It was as if the spirit of hate filled this tiny little rat body, and that was the only thing that kept him going. He had half of his fur was just kind of all clawed off, huge yellow teeth, and these eyes that would make the devil himself shudder. I mean, we kept him in his own cage. No one really wanted to mess with him. We were almost afraid to bring him down to the testing place when we had to. Everyone who walked by, you could see him kind of take that little extra step back as if the rat could somehow bust through the cage and come get us. So there was Tiberius, there was the rest of the rats, the rest of the animals. And one day, they came to discover that someone working there had messed up which rats that were being tested were supposed to go where. As a result of that, they had a contaminated rat in with all the healthy rats, and pretty much the entire fleet of animals had to be destroyed. The entire cross-section had been contaminated by this one mistake. And so they asked for the volunteers, and me being the low man on the totem pole, I got the job. I got the job of acting as the grand genocide master of this entire warehouse full of animals. Now, pretty much, if you've never done this, the way you kill a bunch of laboratory rats sounds kind of cruel, but actually it's probably the least painful thing they would have possibly experienced in their little lives, is to get a big handful of them, you just kind of get them into this brown paper bag and seal off the top so you can still feel the bag kind of moving around, and you put in this tube of air that's filled with pure carbon monoxide. So pretty much you fill up the bag really big and the animals, they're done. And I can still to this day, when I hold my hand like this, can feel the paper bag moving, and I can feel it fill up with air, and all the rats just kind of at once go, and by the time they hit the bottom, they're all dead. So it's like this big pogoing concert, joy of life right before the exalting death, and they fall down dead. So day after day, that's what I'm doing, cage after cage, bag, tube, poof, dead, dispose. And it's getting kind of weird because they laid off a bunch of people for a while because they still need to restock the animals and get everything decontaminated. And so I'm working on the first day in this place just full of animal noises, and as day by day is going on, and more of these animals are just being exterminated, that it's getting quieter and quieter. Finally, on the last day, there was that task. It was me, a bunch of empty cages hanging open waiting to be either disposed of or sterilized, and down at the end, Tiberius, the last rat. So I walked up, and I saw him sitting in his corner looking at me with those devil eyes, just completely freaking me out. So I took my little ether pad to try and anesthetize him, stuck it in there. He went at it like a wild animal, tearing it apart, and finally kind of fell over. So I gently reached in, grabbed the tail, quickly put him in the bag, and I could feel him start to stir, and it was that bag between me and him, and I was sure he could take me. Just that's how scary this rat was. He could take me, you know. Man versus rat, rat wins, in this case, because it was Tiberius. So I remember putting the tube in, hitting the gas, feeling it fill up, felt the little jump, and it was dead. And for that one, I held it there a little bit longer. I'm like, oh, you're really gonna die. You're the devil. You're the devil. You're really gonna die. So after about a minute of just holding it and making sure that thing was dead, I put the bag down and I opened it. And I was afraid too, but I had to see just to make sure. I looked in and there was the dead rat, tongue, drool, just ah. And I'm like, oh, Tiberius, I got you, okay. And as I lift the last bag to dispose it, I felt the just breath flow through him. I was like, what the hell? Jumped back a foot. And Tiberius suddenly looked up, jumped out of the bag, and we see him for one moment to make perfect eye contact, and he shot out of there. And he was gone. And that is courage. That is more determination to live than 99% of the people in this planet show. I mean, I learned more from that rat in that 1 second than any military maneuver ever taught me, any lesson from any story. That is the will to survive. Thank you.